Hey Northstate, happy Thursday. Preston Dunyan here in the Weather Center talking about storm number 2 on the way. Of course, we got to get through the rest of storm number 1. It's still lingering a little bit out there today, and that's what's going to bring you those popcorn showers, right? Little pop-up thunderstorms, a little bit more additional snow over the higher elevations through the midnight hour before that second storm moves in. So there's still plenty to talk about, but it is thankfully a calmer day than yesterday, and then tomorrow, not so much the case, right? We bring those snow levels back down again, and we're talking about significant accumulations in most of our mountain and foothill communities. So without further ado, going to flip you over to the weather computer, break down where we're at today and where we're headed, and we'll take you now to, first of all, those headlines for your Thursday. So it is a day of rain and snow showers, right? Not heavy precipitation really anywhere. Now, you could get that heavy precipitation in small bursts with those thunderstorms that are possible really across the entire region, but it isn't going to be that steady rain that you saw yesterday, and we're also navigating much weaker winds than we saw for your Wednesday. So that was that storm coming on in. It brought that really strong southerly surge across a lot of the area. That's not happening today. We're getting a nice break from that. The only time where you might see some of those gusty winds is going to be in a time frame where you're outside of a thunderstorm and that outflow is hitting the ground and spreading out in all directions. So again, it's really the thunderstorms that could throw a wrench in either your first or third headline here, but for the most part, we're going to have a calmer day. Now, that turns us pretty quickly to attention on your Friday, where things shift a little bit. We get some moderate rain out there. We get some gusty winds back into the picture for the Friday stretch along the north coast in the morning and into the valley a little bit later, closer to midday. Most places really still going to see those strongest wind gusts in the first half of the day tomorrow, back in the ballpark of 35 to 45 miles an hour. So gusty once again, similar to your Wednesday in that sense. Less of a chance of thunderstorms tomorrow. Today's really the last of that for the time being. Then we shift back to thunderstorm concerns on your St. Patrick's Day, so a little St. Patty's Day madness just around the corner. And of course, mountain snow, the big story for tomorrow, because we're dropping those snow levels from where they were yesterday. They're lower this morning, and they're going to go even lower overnight into tomorrow, and that's going to bring those snow impacts to some communities that maybe saw only a little bit or nothing at all out of this first batch. And maybe that first storm didn't play out as we talked about in your area. Maybe you're thinking, hey, this is a total bust. What are you talking about? Well, it's a new storm. It's a new time. So let's get on the horse and let's take a look at how this one's going to play out. I'm going to skip the wind for right now. I'm going to take you to what's going on this morning as I record this here about 8:45. We're seeing those showers tracking through much of California. You can actually see somewhere there in the Central Valley, getting a little bit closer to maybe Modesto, those areas. You're seeing some stronger thunderstorms get going early in the day, whereas locally we're seeing things pretty quiet. Couple showers along the north coast. So if you're checking in from Humboldt Bay, maybe you're feeling that light rain and have been for a couple hours. Wendy says hi. Hey, Wendy, thank you for hopping on. Appreciate everybody joining me this morning. Lots to talk about, and I know it's a busy time of day, so hopefully we can knock this out and give you a better sense of what's ahead. So when we look at that next weather maker, this is really the current weather maker, right? It's bringing some strong showers into places like Trinidad, Crescent City over the next hour or so throughout the valley. Very quiet setup. Going to zoom in on a couple areas where we're still seeing some snow. That is the I-5 and Highway 97 corridor there, US 97 in Siskiyou County, and you're seeing a little bit of snow wrapping around Highway 96, but you do see much of that stretch. So Happy Camp, other spots around there dealing with light rain or at least mixed precipitation, not quite high enough in elevation to see that snow that you're seeing in Etna, Mount Shasta City, McDowell, Tennant, those spots, definitely some snow flurries this morning. And of course, on top of Mount Shasta, you have seen steady snow showers, and that's a dramatic, awesome visual to see if you can check some of the Alert California cameras there facing towards the mountain. Hammond Ranch. If you look at the Hammond Ranch camera, you'll see some really cool visuals in that area. Now I'm taking you to kind of a little bit of a triple point here, right? You've got Tehama County, Mineral hanging out there. This is the northern tip of Butte County that you're seeing here, and then much of Plumas County. You got Lassen County, and Shasta County is just behind the banner there. But this is another area where we've seen fairly persistent light snow showers throughout the morning. I know some folks in Plumas County were saying, hey, yesterday it's been raining. What's the deal? You know, you were talking about all this snow, and then it happened. And we've continued to see those snow showers happen in those spots over the course of the night into the morning. Pretty significant accumulations out there. And that's why you've dealt with some chain restrictions along Highway 32 in Butte County, continuing into Tehama County, Highway 36 from Tehama into Plumas County, and some other restrictions on 89, that stretch all the way from Siskiyou County down here into portions of Plumas County. Let's get back to what's ahead of us, though. Thunderstorms, chances across the board, really. Altura is the only major city in the North State that doesn't have that chance as we roll through the day today. Now, your concerns are going to progress west to east throughout the course of the day. So that means you're going to start with those morning thunder showers possible along the north coast. You see some of that action maybe into Trinity County early mid-afternoon. Into the valley, maybe mid-afternoon is likely your best bet for those storms to fire up over the western foothills, rolling east progressively. And so spots like Chico, Oroville, maybe the eastern reaches of Tehama County towards Paynes Creek, and places like Shingletown, where you're probably talking about snow, you're going to see that chance for maybe some heavier showers and maybe a little bit of thunder snow, right? Thunderstorms that are dropping snow, a rare treat happening maybe closer to the evening hours. So again, it's that west to east progression, and that's not only the case with the overall chances of thunderstorms, but any storm cells that do develop, you're going to see a gradual progression off to the east over the course of the day. So that is the setup for those thunderstorms. Let's take a look at two of our different precision cast models, show you what we're anticipating in terms of how that action might play out. Now, I think the models are bringing those snow levels down a little too low this morning, right? Places like Weaverville, right on the cusp of those temperatures, but it's not going to likely accumulate into anything. Even if you do have those cold enough temperatures here early, very spotty showers, and those spotty showers taper off out at the north coast into the afternoon. You still see a chance at a stray shower or thunder shower, maybe into the 2-3 o'clock window, but you're starting to see some of those stronger cells pop up in the valley. And while I said the general progression is going to be from the western foothills rolling east towards the Sierra Crest, maybe you do see a cell pop up in Butte County to begin with, but it's still going to have that progression off to the east over the course of that storm's life cycle. Here's 5:30. You see a line of a couple cells, one moving towards maybe Whitmore, Oak Run here in Shasta County, maybe one towards Paynes Creek there, and then you got something near Chico and towards Hamilton City right along that Butte Glen County line. A little bit of action there, and we continue to see those showers taper off to the eastern high country in the form of snow above about 2,500, 3,000 feet into the night. Now, with that first storm system, we're on the backside of it, right? Morning temperatures today so much cooler than they were yesterday, so we've got cold air in place. Then we're going to bring in that moisture of that second storm system. You see it just barely on the edge of the left edge of your screen here at 8 o'clock tonight. Now, quick little pause from the weather to talk about a little astronomical phenomenon. We're talking about that total lunar eclipse, and notice most of the North State seeing pretty full cloud cover around midnight, which is that peak window to see that most intense eclipse, right? That deepest red, that full coverage. You're looking pretty darn cloudy out there. So that's an unfortunate little just problem with an eclipse happening in March, right? We often get this active weather this time of year, and unfortunately it times up right when that lunar eclipse is. But notice there are a couple pockets, especially further north and east, where maybe you get some clearing. You see a little bit of that moon out there. Maybe spots like Bernie or Big Bend, you might see a little bit of that action. French Gulch. Again, we don't know exactly where these breaks are, but there's a slight sliver of hope that maybe you poke your head out the window if you're up at midnight and you do see a little bit of that blood moon, that lunar eclipse. Very, very cool stuff. Back to the weather. That second storm system sweeps in overnight. You're seeing rain showers along the north coast, snow showers down pretty low in Humboldt County, maybe down towards 1,500 feet in elevation. Over Trinity County, 1,500 to 2,000 feet. Janet says, boo, yeah, I agree. I really would love to see that eclipse. You don't get those very often, right? To get to see that lunar eclipse total in your area, and we don't get it this time. Fingers crossed for the next one, which I think is probably a couple years away. But anyways, that second storm system is on its way in. When we talk about your early Friday morning, again, really low snow levels, really all of Trinity County. So you're talking about down towards 1,500, 2,000 feet out there. Shasta County is one of those spots where we can really pull that cold air down, right? We can hold on to it in places like Lakehead, where your elevation alone doesn't suggest you'd feel that snow, but you betcha. We're talking about several inches in spots like Lakehead. And then we're going to carry that precipitation through the rest of the early morning hours. Now, notice that snow line is hovering right along Redding. This gives me shades of that storm we saw about a month ago this time, right? February 13th. Now we're here March 13th, and we're talking about the same sort of setup where it is going to be cold and wet, but how much of that do we get at the exact same time is a huge question. So if you look at some different weather models, you might see some hints that it's saying Redding could get some snow. And there is that outside possibility that we get something similar to what we saw about a month ago, right? Where you got that snow that accumulated lightly on your grasses and on bark and maybe on the hood of your car for a couple hours, but it was only about a half an inch and it was gone later in the morning. This is exactly how that would play out if this storm does bring that snow level down low enough into Reading. Right now, I think that's the high end of possibilities, that you get that trace, you get that dusting, but we're still talking about significant snow over the higher elevation. So if you have any mountain travel on the way, expect significant delays, if not full closures of I-5 throughout the morning tomorrow at Fawndale. That's one of those spots, right, where they shut things down. And I think that would be a possibility with the heavy, intense snow that's going to be piling up over northern Shasta County and into Siskiyou County. So something to keep in mind there. And of course, lots and lots of chain restrictions all over the rest of the mountain. Highways 299, either direction, going to be a little hairy out there for you. And we'll see that snow line, again, drop down a little bit lower into those coldest hours of the morning. I think it's overdoing that, and I'll show you exactly why in just a moment. But want to give you the hint that this is a possibility. Here in the middle of March, we had an 80-degree day earlier in the month. Now we're talking about maybe some snow down into the valley floor, the city of Shasta Lake, your better bet for some of that old Shasta. Those spots, a better bet for a little dusting. It's crazy, the swings we go through this time of year, but that is indeed a possibility tomorrow. Notice the rest of the valley, pretty heavy rain out there Friday morning, and that is a pretty good confident bet that places like Chico, Willows, even Red Bluff are going to be seeing that in the form of rain through the morning. No real chances of snow in the lower elevations there. But spots like Paradise, right on the cusp of that snow line, you might see it there. Magalia, much better bet to see a couple inches of snow accumulate. And of course, we're talking about most of our mountain communities that we typically watch for in any winter storm to do pretty well. You're likely to see 2+ inches out there, and some spots like Bernie, like Hayfork, maybe have a chance at 6 inches of snow on the high end of possibilities here with Mount Shasta City, Trinity Center, some of those spots where you could really, really impress and get over that half a foot mark, closer to a foot of snow. And Dunsmuir is one of those spots that's kind of in that mix as well. Throughout your Friday afternoon, showers continue along the north coast. In the valley, we get some showers in the evening, and snow levels are still relatively low as we wrap things up. So any additional flurries out there could make for some fun last bits of snow before we move into a fairly dry start to your Friday across most of the region. Now, it's just a start because Del Norte County's got showers back in by 8 o'clock, and we're going to fill in that rain, and it is mostly rain over the course of the day on Saturday. And this is where I might start to escalate some concerns of nuisance flooding, right? Just a little bit of flooding in a few spots in Trinity County where maybe you get a couple inches of snow on your Friday, and then we flip to that rain over the course of the day on Saturday. We erode that snow level way back up into the Alps or over the northern portions of Shasta County. Maybe some of those neighborhoods around there might deal with some flooding just because you're melting that snow, putting rain on top of it. I think that's something to watch for into the weekend. So that's just one model. I'm going to show you another one. This is the one that I like the best in terms of that overnight into Friday setup. So here's what we're seeing there. Showers and thunder showers along the north coast over the next couple hours. Yep, rolling in off the ocean, maybe impacting Humboldt, Mendocino counties with a little bit of that. You've got light sporadic snow showers over the higher elevations, and the valley dry and maybe even a little bit clear into the early afternoon. So if you're in Red Bluff and you see that sunshine pop up around 2:30, you're thinking, we're all good, we're rocking and rolling the rest of the way. No, that's not likely the case. You're going to see that cloud cover fill in a little bit and the chance for some thunderstorms to develop out there. So again, we're watching that trajectory west to east along and across I-5. You'll see that develop, and we will see those chances really throughout the entire region this afternoon. But I like the valley floor for some of those better bets at seeing that action. So you see it just off to the west of Red Bluff, or to the east of Red Bluff, Reading, and down towards Chico there. Here's that 5:30 look. Great window for some thunderstorm development, right? The heat of the day, if we get that sunshine on the ground, that's going to help pop things up. And again, this is more of a popcorn showers or thunder showers day, right? It kind of pops like popcorn. Whereas yesterday we had that convergence zone in Shasta County where we had winds hitting each other, and it forced that line. You had this diagonal line of intense showers somewhere in that kind of 8-9 o'clock window, and that was impacting Reading, Palisadro, Millville with some really heavy rain and intense lightning in those areas. So the atmosphere was kind of forcing Mother Nature's hand a little bit there, whereas this is more of that pop-up, opportunistic thunderstorm setup that we'll see out there for you today. Into the evening, things dry out pretty well. So you get out towards 9 o'clock. Here's 11:30. Another look at that possible clearing. And boy, there sure isn't much of it, right? Pretty good blanket of cloud cover for that lunar eclipse. So if you're somebody who's got to get up early tomorrow and you're thinking, maybe I'll wake up and go check it out, if it's high stakes for you, it's probably not worth it. This time around, we're just looking pretty cloudy. Then we move into the overnight hours, into that 2 o'clock window. And as that eclipse wraps up, our second storm system gets rolling. So you're seeing pretty light rain throughout the valley to begin with. Snow levels low across Siskiyou, Trinity, and portions of Mendocino County. And of course, the foothills of Shasta, Tehama, and Glenn counties. Feeling that pretty good. Interior Humboldt County, snow levels down towards maybe 1,500, 2,000 feet. Once again, we watch for, you see that line of pink out there? That's that 96 corridor. So you follow that from Happy Camp down towards Orleans, Weechpeck, Willow Creek, Hoopa, those spots, you're not going to see snow accumulate out there. Pretty good bet that if you got anything, it would be a dusting, but it's likely going to be a wet mix of rain and snow in those areas. And that's really what we're watching for in places like Redding later on in the morning, as that heavy precipitation moves through and that front passes. So when we get that cold front through again, you're going to drop those snow levels down a little bit lower, and that's where you might start to see a mix in spots like Elk Creek as you get into far western Glenn County, and maybe you bring that down towards Old Shasta. Certainly Whiskeytown, seeing lots and lots of snow around the lake, Bernie, Shingletown, all the mountain communities. It's snow, no doubt about it, as we roll through into tomorrow morning. But how low can we drop that snow line into Redding? It looks like we're going to keep it just outside, right? Now, West Redding would be your better bet. If you're living in the Enterprise area, you're probably looking pretty good for just rain through the morning, maybe a chance at some flurries. But this model says, yeah, you go out on Placer, you head a little closer to Ono. Maybe you're feeling a little bit of that light snow out there in those areas. But that's really as far as we're going to bring that down into the valley floor. Note that places like Lakehead are the exception to that rule when it comes to our snow levels. And places like Big Bend, right, you can drop that snow level really low in northern Shasta County, apart from the rule that we hear elsewhere. Now, look at Butte County. This is one of the areas I want to focus on, right? It's showing Paradise in that snow line. And I think Paradise does have a chance at some short-lived small snow accumulations as we roll through the day tomorrow. You get into higher elevations. So you go to Magalia. You go a little bit further north along 32. Some of those communities, you betcha, several inches of snow on the way. But it is going to be a spot like Paradise that's right on the cusp of that snow possibility. Berry Creek, another spot where we're kind of putting that estimate right now in the 0 to 1 inch range. And that's really what we're seeing out there. But Trinity County, you're going to get some good totals. Bernie, Mount Shasta City, Shingletown, Chester, you betcha, lots of good snow on the way for those areas. As we roll through the mid-morning stretch, you're starting to see that rain creep a little further north, right? That rain snow line is now north of Redding, and we're keeping things Fawndale northward in terms of snow potential. Rain showers continue out along the north coast. We move into the valley floor with a couple more of those spottier showers into the evening, and we wrap things up Friday night before Saturday brings, again, another round of rain. Now I take you to those winds, because this is why I'm so skeptical of that snow potential in Redding. You got light south breezes out there, and this model's kind of overdoing it a little bit, right? You're not really feeling that 15 to 20 mile an hour setup in most places right now, but you are going to see things generally 5 to 15 miles an hour out of the south through the valley today, at least into the early afternoon. If you can see that fine detail, right, you got a couple arrows creeping out of the west. And that'll be interesting to see if maybe we can set up another little weaker convergence zone in Shasta County somewhere. Maybe that's over Palisadro, Millville again. Maybe that's over Anderson. It's just about where those winds will meet that we could see that potential. But that westerly flow is starting to take over across the western reaches of the North State. So Humboldt, Del Norte, portions of Siskiyou and Trinity counties feeling that westerly wind into the afternoon. And that should kind of shoot its way into the north end of the valley. So Redding, Anderson, Cottonwood, a little west breeze later this afternoon. Now that west wind, you felt that before behind some storm systems. That's that cold air that pushes on through. And that would be pretty cold, right? Coming down from Trinity County, we might be getting some cooler air into places like Redding late this afternoon. But it's how long we can hold on to that, because you're already seeing that south wind get a ripping out along the north coast by 8 o'clock tonight ahead of that next storm system. Places like Chico and Oroville still feeling that south wind all night long. And how quickly that fills into Redding is going to be a huge deciding factor, right? Because colder temperatures and higher elevations, pretty standard stuff. So you might see a spot like Redding hanging out in that ballpark of a rain-snow mix in terms of temperatures early on Friday morning. Here's 6 a.m. Maybe it's 36, 37 degrees in Redding. That might be what you expect out there. Well, think about this. As we head further south, you're talking about maybe 38, 39 in Red Bluff, 40, 41 in Chico. And if our winds are coming from those warmer areas, we are bringing mild air in, and that is going to really severely limit that snow potential in the lower elevations. There is some disagreement on how quickly that happens. But for the most part, that south wind looks to be pretty established by that mid-morning window when we have our coldest air at play. And so I think that coldest air in Redding is going to bottom out somewhere in the mid to upper 30s rather than those low 30s. And all of a sudden, you're not talking about really significant snow. But still other things to watch for in terms of winds. If you're out of the north coast, you're going to feel those gusty winds early in the morning throughout the valley, some breezes through your Friday afternoon, up into the ballpark of maybe 30, 40 miles an hour. So something to keep in mind for tomorrow. A wet, windy, snowy kind of day out there. Taking out of those rain estimates for what's expected through the rest of the day today, that brings you into the ballpark of maybe a 1/4 of an inch to a 1/2 an inch on the high end throughout the valley, but a lot of spots falling underneath that mark. Where you might see some of those higher totals would be where those thunderstorms develop and roll through. through. And again, if we get that convergence line, right, where you get that line of persistent rain and thunder showers just shaping up in one spot and it doesn't move like we got last night, then you're going to see some folks with their rain gauges get another additional inch today, whereas their neighbors a couple miles a little further in either direction are saying, hey, I got a quarter of an inch. Like, what are you talking about, right? So there is that potential for localized higher totals, but as a rule of thumb, pretty limited rain across the board, including the higher elevations where a quarter of an inch would be somewhat of a win, right? Because you're not really seeing that much moisture at play in most places. As we roll through that next storm system, this is your Friday through Saturday. Things bulk up pretty nicely. We see everybody on the board above a half an inch at this point, and a lot of spots above an inch. I think in Redding, maybe you're not closer to 2 inches, but an inch and a half between that shower activity today, your Friday and Saturday action. I think that's totally reasonable. And throughout the course of the weekend, we're going to focus that rain attention to the northwest corner of the state rather than in the valley floor. And that's why you see a spot like Willows or Oroville not move much out of your Saturday, Sunday. You might actually see some nice dry breaks in those areas. But Redding, the city of Shasta Lake, Weaverville, you talk about western Siskiyou County, and then of course into Del Norte County, some of those higher rain totals. So the further north and west you go, the more likely you are going to be socked in and soaked over the weekend with some more shower potential down the line over the course of next week. Now I want to take you to some snow estimates. This runs us through just past midnight tonight. And this shows you there's really not a lot expected out of today's action, right? We're getting those little here and there showers across most of the area, and that's going to add up to maybe an inch. I think in Shingletown, that's a pretty aggressive estimate for what you might see. Now, if you get a little further along 44 towards Eskimo Summit, that might be where you see that 1 inch happen today. But in Shingletown itself, we really didn't see much snow, at least in town proper around, the library, the Dollar General, around there. Things look pretty clear, at least on the cameras early this morning. So I think it would be hard for us to add up an additional inch out of any of those spotty showers that happened this morning and this afternoon. But the real snow is on the way a little later down the line. So this is what I expect through your Saturday evening when things are really wrapping up. And we talked about over the day on Saturday, those snow levels creep higher and higher. This is that additional snow from today through your Friday. And again, Friday is really the main day for that snow potential. And I'm showing you those kind of best guess ranges out there in terms of what we've seen from various different models and all the latest information on some of those really good simulations that are fine detail. So you notice most of our mountain communities, 2+ inches out there. In Chester, you might think that number is pretty low, right? Because we saw some higher totals expected out of the first half of this storm, and we got some really good snow there overnight into today, but you're going to be on the lee side of the Sierra Crest. So you see that kind of purple line, right? That's where that Sierra Crest is modeled in at, and maybe it's, not exactly the location, but we often dump out the majority of our heavy precipitation on the western side of the mountains as that air mass rides up the terrain. It dumps it out, and then on the back side, once you get over those highest elevations, you start going downhill, you have typically drier air. And so that's why you see a spot like Bernie on the high end. Maybe you go west closer to Hatchet Mountain, you get that chance for 3, 4, maybe even 5 inches there, and you head just a little bit further up the road towards Fall River Mills, and your high end is maybe that 3-inch possibility, right? So that dry air and that limited moisture once you get over the top of the mountains is one of the things to keep in mind as we look over the eastern high country. But Mount Shasta City, Dunsmuir, spots where 10 inches, absolutely within reason. You might not want to believe me after what we saw with yesterday just kind of fizzling out, but we'll still see snow showers today, and we still see some really good potential for your Friday in those areas, and a lot of Trinity County. Again, 2 to 4 or 5 inches, absolutely within reason. I think Paradise and Redding probably going to come in on the lower end of both of those estimates, and that T in Redding means a trace, just a couple flurries out there, and I think that's really the upper possibility in a spot like Redding. But you get towards the city of Shasta Lake, a half an inch that sticks around for a couple hours tomorrow morning, absolutely not out of the question. In Paradise, again, half an inch, I think that's possible there. Magalia is where you might start to see that 1 to 3 inch potential shape up for your Friday morning. But with what I mentioned about Saturday in mind, any of that snow out there for areas below 3,000, even maybe 3,500 feet will be short-lived. We're going to bring that rain back in with force over the course of the weekend. So that's really all I've got for you this morning. I'm going to keep a close eye on this over the course of the day, no doubt about it, right? There is still plenty to watch for as this system moves in. And in Redding, I know a lot of folks are going to be eagerly watching to see those south winds. So if you're watching this at home, if you've got a weather station, keep an eye on that south wind in the early morning hours tomorrow. If we're feeling that westerly breeze into a spot like Redding, all of a sudden, maybe that snow chance is out there. But if that south wind is still very established, 5, 6 a.m., all of a sudden we're saying, hey, just another cold, rainy morning, pretty typical of us here in the winter. So I got nothing really more. I will monitor this for comments throughout the day. Appreciate everybody hopping on. Today, again, those pop-up showers. When you hear that thunder roar, head indoors. Tomorrow is that next big impact day, and then that rain will continue over the weekend. So, lots still to watch for. We are going to make it through St. Patrick's Day pretty darn showery for your one dry day out of the next 7. If you have one day that you can get outside, it is your Tuesday. That is going to be a dry day. Looks pretty good right now. And then next Wednesday, right, 6 days out from now, we're still talking about showers. So every day between now and Tuesday is wet, and most of the week after that is. But soak up that rain, enjoy it, watch that thunder and lightning, send us your photos. We appreciate all of that. And I'll see you on Daybreak tomorrow with more, but I will hopefully have some updates on my Facebook page throughout the day, and I'll share some more information here on the KRCR page as well so that you can stay informed. But we look forward to your storm reports. Thanks again. Have a fantastic Thursday.